Hey nerds, so you have your first mini built and primed, it's now time to get it painted. Make sure to check out my other beginner videos to see how we got to this point. Done some sub-assembly for this as it drove me a bit mad the first time I painted a mini trying to reach certain areas. I'm going to be using the Warhammer starter pack as it's the first purchase I made when I started painting last year, so I thought it'd be the best one to use. Inside the kit you get 3 Space Marines, a brush, some bases and 6 paints. I'm only going to use what's in the kit here and stick to the box art just to keep things as simple as possible. There's a little guide on the back for how to build the minis and what colours to apply the shade to. Sub-assembly is really easy if you haven't done it before. If you have a small drill, a simple piece of cork and a paper clip. For this I unravelled a paper clip and used the natural bends in it in order for the power pack and weapons to be angled. Just need some super glue and you're good to go. This kit is push to fit, which I'm not a fan of at all, but for beginners it's ideal not to mess around with glue too much. So grab your water first, some paper towel, and you can use a standard palette or a wet palette. I'm just used to using a wet palette now, but there is a guide on my channel on how to make your own above. Grab your brush and make sure to give it a quick swish in the water and dry it off. Grab your base coat, which is going to be Macragge Blue, and give it a good shake. Stainless steel mixing bowls can be good here, but they're not necessary. Nothing like that fresh pot feeling. Take out a little blob, pop it on the palette. Now as you see here, the paint is too thick to apply straight to the model, so it will need to be watered down. Rinse the brush, give it a wipe, then load the brush back up with water and mix it in with the paint. It still looks a bit thick, so I'm going to add a pinch more water. Wipe off the excess, test again, much better. No need to be too precise here as we can make corrections later. Just get all the bits you need, making sure not to go back over the area that's still wet. Just wait for the layer to completely dry before going back in for other coats. Another way of getting good paint consistency is to wet your brush and pull it from a paint blob until it's correct instead of the whole blob being diluted. Always make sure to check your paint consistencies before going back in. As long as you can see the details on your skin, you should be fine. Nice and quick process, and although it looks a bit wishy-washy, this is a good thing as it means we haven't gone in too thick. When loading your brush, make sure to twist it into a point as well. It's the point that we're using to apply the paint, so it needs to be nice and sharp. Also, after rinsing, keep an eye out for water dripping down the brush. This can lead to a really bad time. Second coat done, and I think one more should do it. Rather a few extra thin coats than one thick one that's going to ruin your mini. I would usually use a much bigger brush for this to speed it up, but luckily it's just one marine today. And also, don't let paint get too far into the body of the brush. You don't want it reaching the base of the bristles as it can ruin your brush. Try to keep it under halfway if you can. Third coat in, and he's looking pretty good. Not sure why they put Agrax Earth shade in here. It's not the most ideal for blue, but I guess it works with the Balthazar Gold as well. Drakenhof Nightshade would be my go-to shade for the blue, but oh well. Balthazar Gold up next for the metallic parts. Palettes can sometimes be better for metallics as they separate quite quickly on a wet palette. Make sure to change your water as well after this, as you don't want any metallic flakes getting into your other paints. So smooth. Same as with the Macragge Blue, but with less dilution usually. Gonna use this on the shoulder plate trim, and probably the sidearm handle as it's a little bit dull back there. When painting detail, your hand can end up in some weird positions. Being a bit more careful here, as metallic is a little bit harder to cover, but still not the end of the world if it does go wrong. Inside the trim is also pretty tricky. This is where having a sharp brush point really helps. 2 coats pretty much did the trick, and I tied it up a little bit with the Macragge Blue. If you keep your paint thin enough, erasing mistakes can be a lot easier. Abaddon Black is up next for the parts between the armour, and as you can see straight from the pot, you can't see any detail on my skin. Adding water really does make a difference. Some of these parts are quite tricky to reach, but again, don't worry, if you've thinned your paint properly, you can correct these mistakes really easily. Not too bad, not too many mistakes. Corax White is up next for the symbols on the shoulder plates. Now, this isn't actually very white. If you compare it to a white like this one from Pro Acryl, the difference is huge. But anyway, we're only using what's in the kit today. Usually Space Marines come with transfers for the shoulders, which would have been great as these are a bit of a pain in the bum to paint. I've been painting for a year now and I still struggle with raised parts like this. Quite a bit of cleanup and restarts needed, but we got there in the end with our white that isn't quite white. I'll be a proper painter one day. Maybe. Shading with Agrax Earth Shade is up next. There's a few ways you can use it. I think Games Workshop would have you cover the whole thing and then layer back up the colours, but you can save a little bit of time by being a bit more precise. Straight over the metallic on the chest is fine, and when it comes to the shoulders, I'm going slightly to the sides so that the earth shade goes inside the rim. 2 birds with 1 stone. Looking more realistic and defined already. Lining the panels and armour detail now, and again, don't worry about being accurate. You can just cover the whole thing with the earth shade, but I do it like this because it's a little less effort later on. Try to find any recesses in the armour and getting underneath the leg panels. Oops, I almost forgot his sidearm handle. Looking pretty good. Exactly the same techniques for the power pack and weapon. The box art doesn't actually show the back of the Marines, so liberties can be taken, I think. Again, with nice thin coats. Don't forget his hands on the weapon either. Doing some tidying up on the body and going back over the raised metallic parts while stuff dries. Always good to be doing something in the downtime in this hobby. 1 layer in and 3 layers in. Let's get some shade going on these. Gonna show the other way of applying shade here. Just coat the whole thing, but don't let it pool or get too thick. If it doesn't look quite right, simply clean your brush, dry it off slightly and use the damp bristles to mop up any excess shade paint. Once you've done it a few times, it becomes second nature, like a lot of techniques you end up picking up in this hobby. Not looking too far off. As you can see, the whole of the blue areas are now a bit too dark. This is where we reapply the blue to the parts showing to re-brighten it to its original colour. This doesn't take too long and it pays off in the end. Everything is now painted, shaded, and colours brightened back up. Using just the paints provided, this guy is ready for a game, and it doesn't take too long at all. It's a shame you're going to have a whole army to paint at some point though. Gonna crack on with the base now, and if you want some tips on basing, there should be a link above. Armageddon Dust is the basing material provided in the kit, and to apply it you can use a cheap brush, blunt knife. I just use this little spatula from Citadel to be honest, half the time. Don't judge. Going to give it a stir, and straight on the base, and it looks a bit like diarrhea. Luckily with this being a push fit, you can remove the mini, so you don't risk getting any on the mini itself, or you can just get it on there and claim it's for realism's sake. Trying to keep it as textured as possible so it doesn't dry too flat, and keep it away from the hole that the mini slots into. Wipe off any excess from the edge. I cheated a bit here and dried mine with a hairdryer. I'm going to cheat again and add some earth shade to it just to make it look a little less dull. Literally slapping this on and just soaking up any big pools with a clean brush afterwards. And there he is. I think the base looks way more interesting with a bit of shade down. Now for the best part of the hobby, painting the rim. Super satisfying, and it's the last stage of the job, so it always feels good to do. I'd say he's not looking too bad. I'm pretty close to the box art. Need to clean your brush after this, and you guessed it, I've made a guide for that as well. Great little kit for getting started and see if you're going to enjoy the hobby. And you can always go back and improve these later if you invest in more paints. But anyway, let's get this guy on the whirligig for a closer look. And if you found this guide helpful, be sure to like and subscribe. Ciao for now.